Hey guys, it's Captain Forest here, and today I'm back with a spicy equal stats battle. Today I have Hellkingspawn versus Dabura from Dragon Ball Z. Now if you guys are new to my channel, please leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for further content. Now, shouts to the Cough Shop gang, they all make awesome content. Their links will be in the description. Also, huge shoutouts to the HQ squad, shoutouts to Korin, shoutouts to Combat as well. They were a huge help with the Spawn and the Dabura section. Much appreciated, they're the driving force of my videos. So, I'm going to go ahead, get right into the meat and potatoes of things, and I'll start off with the Hellspawn himself and go over his abilities. We'll start off with his Necroplasm, since this is what Spawn is made out of. So Spawn's Necroplasm isn't limited to physical attacks only, but it possesses both spiritual and mental properties as well. Thanks to this Necroplasm, he possesses a Type 7 immortality, thanks to the fact he came back undead on Earth when he made a deal with Malebolgia. The first instance when this was shown was during his first battle against Violator, who ripped his heart out, and Spawn got right back up almost immediately without so much as an issue. So for those who are unaware, Type 7, which is undead characters with this immortality who cannot die due to technically being already dead, often overlapping with other forms of immortality. This includes characters who can keep existing as spiritual entities upon dying. So this is very impressive for Spawn. So Necroplasm can affect you on a subatomic level as well. To dive in a little bit into the explanation, when Spawn was briefly tutored by Houdini on how to perform his magic better, it was explained that in order to properly use magic, he needed to grab molecules such as photons and rearrange them so he could create something basic, such as a marble or a car key. Once Spawn was shown to be able to use this without any issues, Houdini no longer needed to teach Spawn. He has a spider sense like precognition that allows him to sense danger and which direction it comes from. However, it should be noted that the reasons as to why he was running towards danger instead of getting away was because one of his enemies was kidnapping one of the homeless people on the street who he lived with at the time. He wasn't able to do anything as he was weakened and tired at the time. Spawn also has his teleportation under his belt as well. At first, using this caused an excruciating amount of pain for him, ripping him apart on an atomic level. However, when he was given the powers of the green world, this was no longer an issue as he transported himself and Granny Blake to the alleys. What's noted is that every time before going to the green world, he complained about the pain, but after his event from the green world, there were no complaints from Spawn. This teleportation allows him to transport other people with him, and the range of the teleportation can extend to 8,000 miles. Spawn has applied this in combat where he teleported inside another person and burst out right through them, literally. His Necroplasm can be extended for 100 miles. It allows Spawn to tear a person's skin right off their body, and this is not to be mistaken with brute strength. A similar situation occurred to someone at the chapel. Spawn can reflect projectiles back at his attackers. Now, going over one of, if not the most lethal abilities in his disposal, Spawn can absorb sins from others and use it against them. Essentially, what this does is any kind of evil that you have committed becomes absorbed into Spawn and it's released into a physical form. Even if you haven't inherently done anything wrong, evil comes in many forms. If you were exposed by evil, then that would be more than enough. If that doesn't fit, then Spawn can use his own evil to manifest a physical form to attack you. It's described that Spawn can see the amount of evil in someone as an aura around them. Once you have been exposed to this, you become devoured by your own evil, and the harder you struggle, the faster you get buried by the evil, to the point that you become forced to commit suicide. And Spawn can also absorb your soul and possibly drain your life force also. Now, to go over Spawn's regenerative properties, in the past he needed to concentrate to restore broken limbs and holes in his body, which drained his magical energy immensely. However, once Spawn went through his metamorphosis, his regeneration increased immensely. Once, when beheading him was considered a fatal move for a Hellspawn, is now something he can regenerate from within seconds. Even more so when half of his body was blown off on top of that too. However, this is not the limit to Spawn's regeneration. He even managed to come back from being erased from existence by Angela's lance, and once, when activated, erases a Hellspawn's very being. This can extend to low to possibly mid-godly regen, as angels perform magic as well. Even more so when it was confirmed that the lance disappeared from Heaven's records as though it never existed to begin with. However, what's a bit odd is that it said that he reconfigured reality to have been able to accomplish such a feat. Now to go over Spawn's symbiote and the abilities he has with the suit. It should be noted that the symbiote itself is a living being with a will of its own and can take over Spawn's body when he's unconscious. Even when separated, the symbiote is still able to telepathically communicate with the host. The symbiote itself also has instinctive reaction and can react on pure instincts alone. He can attack with chains and his cloak. This works against a large number of enemies as well, and can even travel underground. The symbiote can fully fight on its own when separated from Spawn's body. He can move within shadows, and once you're pulled there with Spawn, he can send you to his own realm. Once you are within his domain, Spawn can do whatever he pleases, such as when he separated a fused entity by the name of Cygor into two separate sentient beings. When summoning the creatures of darkness from his beings, being empowered by his necroplasm uses them to suffocate his opponent. Spawn can also send necroplasmic energy through his chains that was enough to atomize some vampires. Now, to go over the powers that the green world bestows upon Spawn himself. He can sense misery, pain, empathy, emotions from every single person on the planet. It allows him to see all events transpire in the world, viewing it in extreme hyper detail. He explains that he sees it as a dark kaleidoscope that lets him see everything. Spawn was able to use the attacker's guilt, pain and suffering that they have inflicted upon their victims to induce terror in them. Spawn also has some elemental abilities such as fire, wind, earth and water. It also has sealing properties as well. He can also absorb all the sins of people into himself, using this when he reduced the casualties in New York so that he could be the prime target against an army of vampires. He's also transferred this to their leader, which made the army turn against him when they saw him as a sinner and ate him alive. Spawn can also revive himself back from the dead when he suffered from Urzen's stare. Spawn can also restore his memories when Mammon took all of them from him. As Hell King, he can summon an army of other Hellspawns to fight for him. Last but not least, we delve into his fate hacks. When making a deal with Maliboga, he was under his control as Al Simmons, and in doing so, his fate and his whole life was controlled by Malibogia, who is a storyteller to other Hellspawns. 10,000 generations of previous Hellspawns tried to break out of this deal, but they could not succeed. They were forever trapped by Hell and their master. However, once Spawn became enraged in mid-combat, he successfully killed his own master, and essentially he was free to do whatever he wanted. He was the very first Hellspawn to ever break out of a deal with Malibogia. Spawn doesn't lack in stamina either. When becoming the King of Hell, his necroplasm had been filled to infinite. What's important to take into consideration is when Spawn first came to Earth, Malibogia explained he severely limited Spawn on purpose with finite amount of power, and the more he used his energy, he would have run out and gone straight back to Hell to become a general against Heaven. The amount of necroplasm he has determines the amount of energy he has in him, but when becoming Hell King, this becomes an issue no longer. Now, let's go over Hellkingspawn's resistances. Spawn can resist spiritual and mental attacks. A mere touch from Malibogia could touch Spawn's soul, whom he sold his soul to. He was constantly attacked by his memories being shoved down against his mind, forcing him to relive events that cause pain on his senses. Even more so when Malibogia has 10 million souls in his realm and crushes one. Spawn can resist attacks that attack his nervous system. He also should naturally have a resistance to radioactivity from nukes, as lower ranked demons from Hell were able to. Spawn can also resist being burnt. He can also casually still run around even after his kneecaps got shot through, showing how impressive Spawn's pain tolerance is. Spawn can resist 11 biomechanical tentacles that pack 50,000 volts each, and a lightning bolt from the crone. He can resist possession from his symbiote. He can also resist being detached from his own symbiote, and he can resist the toxic gas being used against him thanks to his type 7 immortality. He can resist being swallowed by a heap of poison. Holy weapons no longer affect him like they used to do before. He can also resist corruption from Violator, and that's gonna round up all his resistances. I'm gonna go ahead and cover his skills. So when Spawn was still alive, he had many years of military training and was a marine fighter that went through wars. He had been taught everything there is to know about fighting by his former boss, Jason Wynn. Spawn states that he can wield any weapon in his hand without a problem. While it's never stated just how good he is, we know that he underwent a training program that's required to become a marine, which includes 17 forms of martial arts. Spawn is able to use swordsmanship against another samurai without the usage of his abilities. He can also use his marksmanship with his guns against multiple opponents. Against Violator's goons, this would be impressive, as Spawn was severely weakened and nauseated from being tortured and beaten up by Violator for days, to the point he was regressed to a mere human and had to worry about an entire city being invaded also. So that's going to round up Hellkingspawn. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Dabura and see what this demon summons to the table. So Dabura is the king of the demon realm, existing for thousands of years. Dabura was a demon king placed under the wizard Barbady's control by a spell, becoming his right hand man before the appearance of Majin Buu, and thus doing his bidding. Let's talk about the hacks and special abilities that, of course, the king brings to the table. So the first thing that comes to mind is his stone spit. As we know, Dabura gathers saliva in his mouth and spits it at his opponent, who then turns to lifeless stone. The victims are only released upon Dabura's actual death. Dabura also has demonstrated the usage of telekinesis. He's able to easily manipulate large quantities of matter, quickly launching them with great force. During his fight against Gohan, he calmly levitated all the rubble. Gohan crashed on him before bombarding Gohan with said rubble. Dabura also knows the ability called the Evil Flame, a short length stream of fire that is shot from Dabura's mouth. Magical materialization. Dabura can create weapons out of nowhere with which to fight his opponents. During his battle with Gohan, he conjures a sword, and later he creates a spear which he throws and impales Majin Buu. Dabura also has evil senses. He's able to sense the evil within people's hearts, such as when he was able to recognize the latent darkness within Vegeta's heart. Dabura has low regeneration, which essentially means he merely has an accelerated healing ability for normal wounds, allowing him to heal wounds that would normally take days, weeks, or even months much more quickly, sometimes even in just seconds. A good example of this is when he regenerated his eyes shortly after they were gouged by Majin Buu. Overall, Dabura is the king of the demon realm and has much experience fighting all kinds of enemies. He's capable of matching Gohan's techniques and has demonstrated phenomenal supernatural abilities, such as turning his opponents to stone and creating weapons out of nothing. So that's going to round up both combatants. I'm gonna go ahead and find out who wins this fight more often than not. Okay, so looking into this fight more methodically and mathematically, and just looking at things from an in-character perspective, this fight could literally go either way for Spawn or Dabura. It depends on the length of the fight, and it depends if it comes down to a battle of attrition. Now, I think if it came down to a situation where battle of attrition was to take effect and stamina was to be involved, I do think that Spawn would take victory in the long run. If the fight was to take longer, I do think Dabura, even though equal stats applies, yes, Dabura has more stamina starting off. Like, he'll have more stamina in the fight, but it's still finite, it will still dwindle. Spawn doesn't have to worry about stamina. His necroplasm, he's fine. He has infinite stamina, he never has to worry about that. So stamina won't be an issue for Spawn whatsoever. I do think early in the fight, I think the biggest thing that Spawn has to be careful of is the Stone Spit. If the Stone Spit tags Spawn, that's GG. I think that's a GG right there. Dabura would probably win if he tags Spawn like on his suit. But if Spawn uses the chains, he could protect himself, use the chains as a last line of defense to take the petrification, and he could just drop those chains, get rid of them, bring out some new ones. So definitely be able to combat the Stone Spit. However, yes, Spawn should also be careful, because if he takes the Stone Spit lightly, especially like since no characters will have knowledge on each other, the Stone Spit could definitely end him, and Dabura could take victory. Just like in Dragon Ball Z, like Krillin, he underestimated the Stone Spit. He thought the spit was just some type of disgusting random, he thought like Dabura was being a hobo just trying to spit at him, but that spit is actually lethal. So I think that if the spit does tag Spawn in the early game, that's GG. Spawn also has to worry about the equipment too, especially with the weapon creation that Dabura can do, which is very creative. He can do it in mid-combat and make any type of weapon. But I do think that Spawn's type 7, his other types, will keep him in the game. He should be just fine. But from my point of view, it just depends on the flow of the fight. If it takes too long, if Dabura can't put down Spawn, I think Spawn takes victory. I think he would eventually utilize his other hacks and abilities to dispatch of Dabura, especially with the stamina game as well. So Spawn could definitely utilize his nasty hacks to dispatch of Dabura. So it just depends on your interpretation, and it depends on what you guys think would happen more often than not. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below. Feedback is always nice to hear, and I'll see you guys in the next one. It's been real.